All right, Fern, one of the most common questions we are getting these days is how do I pass my level 3?
The short answer is you answer the appropriate amount of questions correctly.
Good. Yes, that's a very short answer. It's accurate. Let's wrap up this show. We hope you enjoyed listening. And good luck with your test.
Well, like I said, everybody, you're welcome.
So let's before we talk into what we think is the best way to prepare for it, let's talk about what it is. Back in the day, there was originally just the level 1, and that was it. Now, at some point after the level 1, they actually opened up the level 2, but prior to the one that we took, it was actually just show up to your level 1 again. So if you took your level 1 and you came back and you kind of helped out a little bit, and that was whatever it was deemed at the time, like probably just, stand around, point at some people's knees, tell them to push them out type of thing. Now you're level 2. And that was it. And then eventually the level 2 became, hey, you're going to show up and you're going to coach others. Did you take that original iteration of the level 2?
No, I did not. I didn't. I don't remember why. I think by the time I was ready, they had done away with it.
Yeah, you weren't good enough at first.
That is a fact. Most people were not. Yeah, I won't even argue that.
I was
The
one of the few that was good enough. I passed the old level 2, which, we've all heard the horror stories about that. But I was one of the few that passed the original Santa Cruz. I think it was the first level 2 ever. So, but point is, they
Did
had
you just
that.
make that up?
No. I passed the level 2.
No, about the first level 2 ever.
No. That was the first level 2 that was an official level 2.
The old level 2 or the quasi new level 2?
I love how, because this is like common talk amongst trainers and what, like the old level 2, which one? No. So the level 2 that was you show up, you coach the fellow participants who were there in
Yep.
2 of the 9 movements.
Yep.
They weren't really going to many places, so I took it at HQ in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
It was during the week. It wasn't on a weekend.
Yeah.
But I'm almost 100% it was the original, the very first level 2 given.
You know who I'm going to ask about that?
Nicole Carroll.
That is who I'm going to ask about that.
Because she's coming on the show very
She
soon.
is coming on the show, but and she can run through a lot of this because she's been obviously at the helm for the vast majority of this for a long time. But yeah, I am curious to get her thoughts on it. So we'll assume that in typical fashion, you are embellishing, and that is not, in fact, the first ever level 2. But
Okay.
if it was, I will admit that. Not that I was wrong, but that your story was accurate.
All right. So, and I know exactly how we're going to ask her because I know something that she will know about it that will remind her if it was.
Oh, I'm sure she remembers. She's got a great memory. So
There's a very specific person that was there that will remind her if it was the first one.
okay,
I'll tell you off air before we ask her.
fair enough.
So anyway, and I'll also tell her this story. We're getting feedback by Pat Sherwood, Dave Castro, Nicole Carroll, Coach Glassman's there. We're going up the stairs at HQ. People are coming down crying because no one's passing. It's my turn to go up there. And I'm like, well, fuck. These guys were better than me. No way I'm passing. And Nicole Carroll goes, Jay, you're not a great coach, but people like being around you. And I was like, thank you.
I agree with I only agree with one of those statements.
You agree with 50% of that?
Yeah, I agree with 50% of that. So I agree
anyway,
that you are not a great coach. I don't agree with the fact that people like to be around you.
well, you've spent a lot of time with me. So, I wound up passing, but the point is the level 2 then became now you're not going to coach the participants, but remember there was a time where people would volunteer to show up to get coached.
Correct. Yep.
So, and I think why they started doing that was because the participants that were taking it were good movers, and it was really hard to spot faults. Not that anyone couldn't be coached, but they realized, okay, we need to get some other people in here so you can coach them. And that continued, and then eventually they got rid of that altogether and created what is now a slightly different version than the current level 2, where you showed up, you got feedback, but then there was a test. And it
Well, originally, so it went from that kind of level 2, and then they created the CPC, the coaches prep course, and then they eventually changed that to what is kind of still very similar, the level 2 as we now know it, which is 2-day course. It was untested for a long time. It was tested on site for about a year, maybe a little bit
yes.
longer. I don't remember the exact time, but it was tested on site for about a year. And now there's been an additional revision where there's still a test, but is not tested on site anymore. So it is a web-based test that you take once you finish the course. And I believe you have 30 days from once you get access to the test to take the test.
Yeah, so that's kind of where the level 2 is at these days. And now if you pass that, you pass the test at home, you can go take your level 3, which is actually the certification. So to be clear, the level 1 and level 2s are certificate courses, for the reason being a certification implies you show up to somewhere and all you do is take a test. There's no content being given to you prior. So you'd equate it to like a job certification. You want to become a truck driver, a nurse, whatever career, you show up to get that certification. And then
Yep.
beyond that, there's the level 4, which we're going to talk to Nicole Carroll about in an upcoming episode. But today we're really talking about this level 3, which is really an all-encompassing test on everything you need to know CrossFit.
Yeah. So if you want to know with regard to credentialing, then just go back and listen to the episode with Amy Hollingsworth. So she is the person who works with getting a lot of those courses their appropriate credentials. What we're going to talk about today is kind of how to go about putting yourself in the best position to succeed when you sit and take the level 3. So again, we all know you got to take the level 1, you got to take the level 2, or you have to have 1,500 hours of coaching at the collegiate level. And then, but if you're going through the CrossFit route, you have to have 750 hours of loud coaching, including those 2 previous courses. So you've done all that. You've submitted an application. It's been verified. You got your CPR, AED, all that stuff is up to date. And now you've scheduled the test. You have to go to a testing center. But what we have to do first is prepare.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I don't know how it was for you. My story about the level 3 was, you're on staff and they basically said, hey guys, we'd like for you to take the level 3. And I didn't know any better. So I'm like, okay. And then you realize you have to go take it at like a testing center. And they gave us this window of, hey, you have to take it between these dates. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll set mine up towards the end, so I have a few weeks to study. And I didn't realize that you can't just show up at any time to take this test. Like you have to. So I called the test, or maybe went online to schedule it. And the only time I could take this level 3 within that window that we set out was the very next morning. So I found out I have to take it to I have to take it tomorrow.
Oh my God.
And I remember
Did you pass the first time?
I did pass the first time. And I mean,
I did too.
people may be goofing like, oh, that's a silly question. We know plenty of people that are, very good coaches. Let's just leave it at that did not pass their first time.
I know people that have taken it 4 times.
Yeah. And we're talking high level coaches that, have made it onto the CrossFit staff. It is a challenging test, but
it's a very fair, but you've put in work. If you hold a level 3 credential, you put in a lot of work.
Yeah. And that's why, to me, it was almost a sigh of relief. I remember hanging out for the day, just being like, I'm not really going to do anything. There's no sense in cramming. At this point, I either know it or I don't know it. And I, went in there and the woman was like, all right, you have 4 hours and 20 minutes or something. And I was like, I won't need that. Don't worry. I'll be back out in an hour. I was in there for every minute of those 4 hours and 20.
I think I took it in about 3.
Well, you're so much smarter than me, Ferd.
I'm so glad this is recording.
So anyway, let's talk a little bit. What's your typical advice? Someone says, I've got my level 2. I want to get my level 3. What should I study?
I've had to revise my answer because I realized my answer was not accurate. So typically when people would ask me this question, they said, what did you study? And my my typical answer was just straight up, I didn't study for the test. And I wasn't saying that to be, I mean, we all know that I'm not smart. Like if you want to see my college transcript, I'll show you, it's not good. So, and I wasn't studying per se, right? Like I wasn't sitting down and I wasn't reading notes, but I had been nerding out for years on all things CrossFit. So if you were to go on, and I wish I had it, I don't know what that computer is long gone at this point, but at one point for a significant amount of time, I had gone through and then not only backlogged and collected. So this is probably, yeah, this is 2009 because remember I took it on deployment. I had on my computer, I had every video that was coaching centric or nutrition based categorized on my laptop in folders. So it was like coaching, and I had gone through and I'd made folders, and the folders were level 2, like labeled level 2, where there's a ton of old videos of coaches they have like little snippets of coaches going through the level 2. I had movements on like by movement, right? So like by the push press, the air squat, the overhead squat. I had the full Dave Tate series. I had the Louis Simmons series. I had the rowing series. I had anything that had Kelly Starrett or who else was in there? But basically, I had like uber nerded out and I had it all. It was all categorized, and I believe that I had it in chronological order too. And I would just watch them on repeat. I would go through and I'd watch them and I'd watch them and watch them and watch them. So I had been nerding out for a really, really long time with regard to the actual coaching aspect. And then at that point, I was pretty well versed in the course content because I had been teaching it for probably something to the tune of maybe a year. But so I wasn't studying for the test. I was studying to be a professional. And it just happened to be that those two time frames kind of overlapped. So that I had been studying because I wanted to be really, really good at it. And then this test came up and I was like, and I kind of looked at it this way, which is like, if I can't pass this without kind of studying in air quotes, I don't know if this is for me.
Well, and I think that's the biggest piece of advice we can give. It's not about studying. It's about, assuming you're taking the level 3, my assumption is you've been coaching at least 2 years. Like 2 years would probably be the minimum time from the first exposure to CrossFit to your level 3, something along those lines, because in there you have to take your level 1. You've
That's really
probably waited.
fast.
Yeah, I'm saying that's extremely fast, but minimum. You've taken your level 1, 6 months later, you came back, took your level 2. A year and a half later, you're taking your level 3 because you need to accumulate those 750 hours.
Yeah, you'd have to be coaching a minimum probably of 30 classes a month, like without ever taking a break off of that cadence in order to get to that number in 2 years.
But the big picture that I think you and I are both expressing in this is we were immersed in this. I mean,
yes.
There was a handful of things, and obviously we can't talk about the specific questions and whatnot. And
I don't even know what they are, to be honest with you.
There's a handful that I kind of remember, but the truth is we both took it over 5 years ago. They've probably changed. They've probably, shifted some things around.
Well, I know for a fact they've changed it because they've done, and when we talked to Amy about, I know all the video is different. So like none of that is the same.
But the point being, there wasn't much on that test that wasn't, well, I've experienced this. There was a handful of questions where I'm like, wow, I did not read an article on this, or I probably should know that a little bit better. But for the most part, the reason I was able to pass without studying was because I had been studying for 7 years, right? I had been studying every day of my life for this. I mean, a lot of the questions are like, let's look at movement and what do we see here? And the questions are angled from different perspectives of like, what's the major fault? What's she doing? What's he doing? What would you give for this? So it's like, you get that by coaching.
That's the biggest thing that I tell people that, so forget the technical aspect of it, meaning the book stuff, if you will. If you're not in the gym on virtually a daily basis, you're really going to struggle because the actual coaching aspect of the test, you're probably going to fail. The seeing and correcting, the watching a group of people move, and then being able to pretty quickly sift through everything that's happening to whittle down, what is this question asking? And then be able to kind of selectively ignore what I'm seeing in the video to really pinpoint what's happening. That sounds simple, but it's not. Like you have to have, and if you're going to do that quickly, you have spent a significant time on the floor practicing this skill of coaching. I don't mean running a clock and being a DJ. I mean physically looking and seeing and correcting and teaching that you are not going to pass. I'm pretty confident to say that.
Yeah, and that's for that reason. When people ask me what they should do, I should say you should be coaching often. And then if I were going to give you anything specific to do, I would say go take as many of the CrossFit online courses as you can.
Take those. And then I
And
typically tell people, go ahead.
that includes the judging course. Now there's a lesson planning course, the programming course, because the videos are similar. At least, you're watching something and then you're getting tested on it, like on the test, but also hop on YouTube and just watch movement. Take those courses, but then watch movement. And what were you going to say?
The other thing I was going to say is and then go through and just, there's a reading list that when you register for the test, they're like, this is the content that you should cover. You should go through and you should probably give yourself, I tell people typically 6 months. Once you've decided you're going to take it, put yourself on a 6-month window. If you feel confident to do it a little faster than that, by all means, but that'll give you a safe window to read through all of the content minimum one time without kind of getting overwhelmed, and then being able to go back through it and read it in further depth a second time. Because typically if anybody who sits down, I'll just ask them a series of questions. I'll say something like, explain the Hopper model to me, or what are the 10 general physical skills, or what's the definition of CrossFit? What is the definition of fitness? And if we're struggling to answer those questions, which is all level 1 content, I tell them, don't even bother registering for the test. Like, you're just not prepared. Like, those are the things that you need to know. You need to understand the theoretical hierarchy for the development of an athlete. You need to understand, like, what is the nutrition prescription and why. You need to really understand the 4 models within the What is Fitness lecture and how they apply overall to the definition of fitness. So, and those are pretty dense lectures, to be very frank. If you've not sat in the What is Fitness lecture, I mean, go back and listen to my conversation with Dr. Jenkins. Like he loves that lecture, and that's a super nerdy lecture. There's a lot there, and you need to be able to take each one of those concepts and at least unpack it 1 or 2 levels to talk about it. If you're talking about, if you don't understand the bioenergetic aspects of the What is Fitness lecture, when we're talking about the 3rd model with regard to ATP and the pathways, the metabolic pathways, you need to freshen up on that and understand what those are and how they work and roughly what the time domains are and how those apply to CrossFit style workouts. Like, could you take CrossFit workouts and put them in one of the pathways? So there's the technical knowledge, but then what I think is very interesting about the level 3 test is there's a very specific amount of practical knowledge that you have to possess. Meaning, if you're not doing CrossFit, if you're not a CrossFit practitioner, not in the sense of coaching, but in the sense of training CrossFit, you're also going to struggle, because I know there's certain things in there with regard to, and I'm not giving away any questions here, but they're going to give you a workout, and they're not going to tell you what the workout is. They're just going to give you the name, and they're going to ask you a question based on that. So if you don't understand A, what that workout is, B, what the movements are, the modalities, the function, the time domain, all of that, and the loading, you can't even begin to answer the question. So that's what I think is super unique about that test, is like, if you were just a random person walking off the gym and you're like, I've been coaching in college athletics for 10 years, like, you're not going to pass the test. Like, and that's not saying you're not smart. Like, you're very, very smart to have been doing that, but you need to be a CrossFitter to pass the test.
Yeah, and you not only a CrossFitter, but like you're implying one that's been really immersed in this world of CrossFit. And just to show you how challenging it is, you're talking about the What is Fitness lecture, a lecture both you and I have given probably dozens of times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it this coming weekend, and I'm going to study before I give it. Like,
I am too, actually. Yeah.
It's never ending. I'm sure mine will be much better than yours, but still.
I doubt it. But,
But the point is, it's never ending. And like you said, so a couple of tangible things. Take those online courses. I would go to your box and just watch people move. Like, just sit there, not a class you're coaching, because there's distraction. You're balancing the group management, the demonstration, the music, like Fern said. Watch someone else's class and just look at, is that athlete keeping their heels down? Is that athlete violating quarter extremity that we talked about on a recent episode? Is that athlete, pushing their knees out, tracking their toes, all of those things? You have to just be able to see that. And then, like you said, when you sign up for the level 3, there's a list of suggested readings. Read all of that. From the time someone says, okay, I'm taking it, how long would you give them? Like, what would be an appropriate amount of time to say, all right, study for this long?
Minimum 3 months. Minimum.
So at this point, they've accumulated the hours. They sign
Mhm.
up because you have to apply to take it. They get approved. You would say then give it 3 months.
Minimum.
And
That, like, I would say don't take it any sooner than 3 months upon being approved. Probably closer to 6, though, like I said.
and what kind of studying? Like, what would you say just from a general practice of like 10 minutes a day, 4 hours a day? Like, what would you put in
Well, if
there?
you have 6 months, I would tell you anywhere between 30 to an hour a day, meaning read an article, watch a video every single day. And if you read an article, depending on how quickly you read, let's call it 10 to 20 minutes, depending on which article it is. Some of them are a little bit more in depth. And then go through the archives of the journal, pull a video in there, and watch that video and pick up different coaching cues or how they look at it or how they teach it, stuff like that, just so you can start really getting immersed in that stuff. So I would say 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, if you did that for 6 months, it's 180 hours if you did an hour a day. I mean, that's a lot of time. And that's assuming you don't do any more. But that's what I would tell you is, like, it's a safe plan would be 6 months, roughly an hour a day, every day, so that it's not overwhelming. You can retain it, you can unpack it, you can take notes on it, you can write down questions, because there's some of these concepts you're going to have to do follow-up kind of homework on to understand some of the underlying concepts with regard to that topic. You might need to dive into the metabolic pathway, or if you're going to understand Krebs cycle or metabolism, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of some other stuff, like looking into different types of muscle contractions versus concentric, eccentric, isometric, all that stuff, and understand it. So there's going to be some things in there that you need to have bare minimum, like, basic understanding of, preferably a lot more than basic, but like you just need to understand it. Like, if you're listening to this and you had no idea, it's some concept that I just listed that you aren't sure on, supremely confident that you knew what it was, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you need to understand those concepts.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out there. This might be a little extreme. If you're really serious about
Par for the
taking it,
course.
well, I mean, other than joining our mastermind group, which we have a huge success rate in helping people pass.
I
I was
wanted to
at
go back
Water.
and look at what the number was, but I want to say something to the tune of like 10 to a dozen people have passed their level 3 in our group.
Yeah, I've had people come up to me at Wadapalooza when I was just there that said, "Hey, we passed." People that were in our mentor group, and I also have had, and you've seen these. The messages we get that we wouldn't have passed if not for the podcast. Just what we're putting out there. Go back and
Two last week, yeah.
yeah, and listen to the episodes, specifically the ones on movement. Those I think are
Yeah.
super beneficial. But I would tell you this: if you're really serious, go take your level 1 again.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. It's well worth the investment, but take it. And I think that's an interesting concept, because I always think if you take it a second time with the intent of getting something out of it, which is for further education, I would imagine it's a whole different experience. Like, you're unpacking the concepts when you sit for the first time. And it's always interesting is that a lot of people, when they take the level 1, a lot of the feedback is sometimes that people will give us is something like, it's just a lot, or they look at the level 2. So the feedback on the level 2 potentially is like, well, I think this should be in the level 1. And that's the cart before the horse type scenario. It's like you need to understand the basic concepts of what we're doing before we talk about like your ability to teach, see, and correct. You can't teach any of this stuff if you don't understand it fundamentally and how it works and how it applies and all that stuff. So it's always an interesting concept to me is that when people want that feedback or they want the level 2 to precede the level 1, it just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and being someone that took the level 1 multiple times just to learn, like I know the first time you take your level 1, you're like, A, you're overwhelmed, you got a lot going on, and B, you're just not experienced enough to retain everything. You know,
Well, there's
for
also that element of excitement where you're just like, people are just so jazzed to be there. They're like, it's amazing, right? And then when you're in that state of excitement, it's really hard to layer in this element of comprehension. Like, are you comprehending some of the really in-depth concepts being covered in that course?
Yeah, and it's like anything, the second time you get it a little bit better. And I know that's a huge investment to ask of people to take their level 1 again, not just from a financial perspective, a time perspective, but if this is important to you and you really want to pass, I promise you that will help. And I think just like you said, just the angle in which you're going to learn stuff, you're going to take things in differently and listen to it from a perspective of, okay, I'm trying to study. And while you're in the small breakout groups watching the trainer, what they're looking at, what they're seeing, why they're saying these things, it's just a different perspective that I think will be super beneficial. But not everyone's going to have that time or the money to do that. But at least like you said, you can go on YouTube and basically find the level 1, find those old videos. I didn't have organized folders like you did, but I had my go-tos. I remember 2 videos specifically, one of Justin Berg coaching the overhead squat,
Yep.
and one of Andy Stumpf. I also think he was coaching the overhead squat
Yep.
in there. And I watched those over and over, not just when I was interning for staff, but then again when I was taking my level 3. And there's just this day and age, they only used to be on the CrossFit Journal, but nowadays, I mean, look, if you go to the Best Hour of Their Day YouTube channel, you'll see some of the stuff we put out there in the dropping in videos are some of the stuff you should be looking at. I mean, we put a clip of you teaching a little lesson on the box jump that people learn, but those are the types of things that are in the level 3. Those are the types of things you should be practicing for. So really what we're saying is just dive as deep as you can into everything.
Yeah, and you have to know that there's some anatomy and physiology in there. Nothing crazy, but I believe if you take the I think it's Lon Kilgore's course, Anatomy
Yes.
Without a Scalpel. I think that is super beneficial. Just you do need to know those things. So going back to the previous episode about quarter extremity, and Dr. Jenkins actually hit us up about this, and he was like, "Hey, I don't know if I agree with like never using these terms," and he and I were going back and forth yesterday, and yes, never is an absolute, and typically if you use an absolute, you're wrong. But I do say never on purpose. Like you can use them, and you should use them occasionally. But but here's what's more important: you absolutely better understand them, right? Like whether you use them or not, like it should be up to you, and you should be able to figure that out and understand like context, like who your audience is, all that stuff, um, and then all that stuff. So then you can go from there and get that sorted out. But you should largely not be using it for coaching, but you better understand all of those concepts at multiple levels.
I like to moderate a debate between you and Dr. Jenkins.
Oh, he would probably crush me.
He's one of I love when we get feedback from him and comments from him because I highly respect him. I think he's a smart dude, and he's a doctor, clearly knows this stuff. So it's nice to hear that doctors are impacted by the best hour of their day. Hey, we're doing some good stuff out there, but you know again, like you're saying, you have to know those major concepts. If there's anything we've ever discussed and you're like, what's that? Can you spot quarter extremity? How would you coach it? What does it mean? Like you said last week with the whole active shoulders to chat, like understanding what it means, how you would prevent it, how you would improve it. It's just knowing everything you could possibly know about CrossFit. That's really what it comes down to.
And then the other part that you shouldn't overlook is, because not everybody gets to dive into this, is programming. There's a decent chunk in there with regard to programming and and how to program for GPP. So again, if you don't know what GPP stands for, these are the kind of things you need to understand. We're talking about general physical preparedness, so that's the kind of stuff that you should understand. And then when I'm designing a GPP program, what does that even mean? First of all, with regard to what is CrossFit, the definition, and then what we're trying to achieve with regard to what is fitness. And I don't mean what's your random definition of fitness. I mean, what is the CrossFit definition of fitness? And then how all of that trickles down into, okay, well, if I'm making a GPP program, I understand what the goal is. I understand that variance is a big piece of that. What in this kind of series of workouts would create good GPP or good variance for a particular athlete?
Well, and you know how you can learn that? You go check out the best hour of their day programming.
That's a good point. That's
I
a good
mean,
point.
here's what we're basically telling you guys. If you want to pass the level 3, subscribe to the best hour of their day podcast. Listen to every episode twice. Take notes. Ignore most of what Fern says. Listen to what Ackerman says. Then go watch every episode of Dropping In on our YouTube channel and subscribe to the best hour of their day programming. Clearly, we're somewhat joking, but at the same time, I think you would. I mean, we've proven, we have a track record that if you do that, ideally you also join our mentorship group, you're gonna pass.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of an overarching theme here, which is the way I would approach it. And the people who are successful are not studying for the test. They're studying to understand the concepts, right? So it's kind of like saying, you know, think about the best. Everybody's been to like a physical therapist or some sort of specialist with regard to movement, stuff like that. And the best ones are the ones who understand all of the concepts and how they relate to each other, not just understand the insertion and action of a muscle and what muscle this is and what nerve is applied there. They're the ones who understand the integrated approach with how all of these things are linked. And that requires a pretty solid understanding of each one of those concepts in and of itself, and then how it affects the overarching system of the human body. Like, those are the people that I want to work with, because they understand that if I have a hip problem, that can lead to referred pain at the knee, and then they watch me walk, and then I look and have like some sort of weird pelvic twist, and that's affecting also my foot. And then they are just like, okay, now how do I deal with that? And I'm not going to treat the knee type thing. It's the same thing with CrossFit. If I'm talking about programming or nutrition, what is the underlying concept that needs to be applied here that I can use in order to address this situation or this scenario, that being a question on the test. So I think if you really study CrossFit to understand CrossFit and be a nerd about CrossFit, that's your best bet. So you should read all those articles. Go back and read the What is Fitness article. Go back and read article 21 about nutrition. Go back and read, all of some of the other ones. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Getting Off the Crack, written by Nicole Carroll.
Yeah,
Like all the
even
zone articles.
the old What is Fitness articles by Coach Glassman, even
That's what I'm
just
saying. Like, what is
starting
CrossFit?
your
All
own
that.
starting your own box, like the old school CrossFit Journal articles are where it's at. And a whole point that we haven't even touched upon is that nutrition component. You got to read CrossFit Journal 21 by Nicole Carroll. Something we'll definitely talk to her about on the future episode. But there's so much to know. I think the big picture, if we were going to kind of wrap it up for you, is be preparing your entire CrossFit career, but specifically apply, give yourself 6 months, spend that hour a day watching a video, reading an article, go back and watch more movement. If you know of someone that's past their level 3, go meet with them, chat with them, have them watch you coach, maybe watch them coach to see what they're looking at, and then potentially join a mastermind group, whether it's ours or someone else's, but learn from other people, learn from people that have done it before and that know a little more than you.
Yeah, the other thing that I think can be useful with regard to programming is, regardless of what programming you're following, and this honestly doesn't matter. So like whether you're doing best hour of the day programming or .com or warm up and workout or hand plan or any of those things, take that workout, and then every day, this should take you max 5 minutes on the long end. Unpack that workout meaning write down everything you understand about the workout. So is it a couplet or is it triplet? Is it a single modality workout? Is it a chipper? What are the movements? What are the modalities? Do you understand there's weightlifting, gymnastics, monostructural? Talk about the function. Is this redundant? Are these somewhat complementary? What's the time domain? What's the loading? What is the rep scheme? Like, how does it fall? And think about when we give the programming lecture in the level 1 course, there's essentially like 7 big ticket variables in a given workout, and see if you can unpack every single workout for those 7 variables, so you can start to really understand workouts and movements and what makes effective workouts within CrossFit. And that should take you 5 minutes on the long end. Everything you understand about it. Okay, what's the movements? What's the intended time domain? Rep schemes, all that stuff. And then you'll really start to unpack programming and understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's it. Dive into everything you can. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. We're happy to help, but you got to start. You got to make it a priority in your life. You need to be spending time every day, and we have no doubt that you can pass. You know, we both did, and it was not because we, crammed. It was because we made CrossFit an integral part of our lives.
Yeah, so take one thing a day and then deep dive on that one thing a day, because that's what you're going to need for level 3.
There you go. Good luck with that. We hope you all, we wish you nothing but the best. And like we always say, if you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. And we have a very successful track record in our private group of helping people pass their level 3. Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day, and thanks again to our special guest. We appreciate all you guys do for us with Best Hour of Their Day when it comes to sharing our posts on Instagram, when it comes to subscribing to us on YouTube, when it comes to the constant feedback. We are grateful and we appreciate it. We are trying to build a community based on coaching development and becoming the best version of yourself. And it goes without saying that we couldn't do without all of you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Season 1 of Dropping In is out. We are getting tremendous feedback and we'd love for you to check it out. Leave us a comment on there. Head over to our Instagram. Give us a follow. Like our pictures. Feel free to share anything that resonates with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for us, please don't hesitate. Email us, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. Thanks again. Until the next episode, we hope you've had the best hour of your day.